I hope all you lovely people had a nice break, and hey, we can finish up this module on Aristotle. Now, this module has been focusing again on how Aristotle understands the rational part of the soul and how this concerns our, this rational part of the soul concerns our capacity for knowledge and truth. And so the intellectual excellences of this aspect of the soul concern knowledge. And remember, by knowledge, we just mean reason's possession of the truth. Knowledge is reason's possession of the truth. And then we've seen how Aristotle divides up now this rational part of the soul into a scientific part about the eternal, unchanging things, but also that calculative or deliberative part about the things that do change, the contingent things. And so because of these two areas that we can study of knowledge, then of course we get two main, a division of knowledge there into these two different areas. The first, of course, that we talked about was the scientific knowledge of the necessary, the universal, and the eternal. And we've seen how this type of knowledge is more theoretical, mainly about, it's about life, about contemplation, about just thinking for thinking's sake, right? And by the way, Aristotle thinks that's pretty awesome. But but the three intellectual excellences that we saw then associated with the scientific part, again, with the intellectual accomplishment of Sophia, the systematic knowledge of episteme, and the intelligence of nous. And again, pretty theoretical for life of contemplation and study. And Aristotle thought that was pretty cool. But of course, it's not enough just to think, we must act. And so that leads us to the second type of knowledge that concerns the calculative and deliberative knowledge of the contingent, the particular, and the temporal. Again, the type of knowledge that's linked to action. And so this is about a more practical or professional life, again, of action. And we saw here that there are two main intellectual excellences. There's the wisdom of phronesis and the technical expertise of techne. Techne concerned, as we saw, techne is concerned with the product, whereas wisdom of phronesis is concerned more with the action itself, conforming to the excellences of character. And we saw there they are. We can break wisdom down, phronesis down into three different excellences as well. The political expertise of politike, the household management of oikonomika, and the individual or the more personal wisdom of our own actions. And so, yeah, there's a lot of excellences on there. And Aristotle does wonder, look, why should we value all these excellences? And I think Aristotle will give us two main reasons. So what are the two reasons? The first he says is that, look, these intellectual excellences are just intrinsically valuable. That is, we should just value these excellences, these intellectual excellences, for themselves. Because, look, these excellences are the perfections of our different faculties of reason. Again, they're the perfections of the rational part of our soul, the suke. I haven't said that in a while. And he says, like, look, we should just want our soul to be in the best possible state. Why not? It's your soul, it's your suke. You should want that to be in the best possible state. And that then includes all those intellectual excellences. And so he says these excellences of our rational part, we should just value even if they produced nothing. Even if you just sat around and contemplated, we should still value these things because they are excellences, perfections as much as possible of our soul. Though he does say, of course, there is a second reason to value these intellectual excellences because he thinks these excellences are also instrumentally valued. That is, these excellences are necessary to achieve or live truly happily. Truly happily, is that a word? True happiness, eudaimonia. That requires these things. Because remember, the happiness of eudaimonia is the activity of excellence, right? Of all of our soul. And so Aristotle would say we cannot truly be happy. Be happy. That sounds too much like a state. We cannot live happily. We cannot really do that without developing and exercising your intellectual capacities or your capabilities. And as I mentioned a couple videos ago already, is that we all must develop our intellectual capacities to some extent, right? We need at least basic critical thinking and being able to do some practical stuff like sew a buttons, cook a meal, maybe dance with someone you like. That's all valuable, right? But otherwise, developing your intellect, you'll go deeper depending on what your plans, what your structured life looks like. So maybe you'll become a lawyer or a politician, and so you'll care about political expertise. Or maybe you'll become a mathematician or a scientist, and so intellectual accomplishment will be your area. Or you can be, again, the engineer, the musician, the dancer, the artist, the artisan. And so then, of course, you'll care about technical expertise. And so on. All these how you develop them and how deep you go will depend on your plans, your structured life. And that's already, I think, is pretty awesome, because that's going to be happiness. But Aristotle will also say, we will all need wisdom. We will all need phronesis. To truly be happy, we will all have to care about that, because that's going to be about how you're going to live your life in accordance with excellence. Apart from all those intellectual excellences, you need these excellences of character to master, again, your emotions, your desires, and appetites, to tame the subservient part of your soul. And so this leads Aristotle to another question. Well, why is the phronesis of wisdom, or wisdom phronesis, why are these things needed? Because look, if you already have excellence of character, why do I need wisdom? Or if you don't have excellence of character, well, why don't you just talk to someone who does have the excellences? And why do you need to have phronesis? Again, so if you have excellence of character, well, what good is phronesis? You already got the excellences of character. But if you don't have excellence of character, why not just talk to the people who do have those excellences of character? You don't need it. Wisdom in either case doesn't seem to be necessary for anything. So why do I need wisdom? And in response to this, Aristotle has a very interesting argument in the last couple sections of Book 6 of the Nicomachean Ethics there. Oh, this is a pretty wild argument. Because what he's going to say here, which is pretty cool, is that wisdom and excellence of character require each other. What he's saying is you can't have one without the other.
You can't have one without the other.
You cannot have excellence of character without wisdom, and you can't have wisdom without also having excellence of character. Now, before I go into that argument, I want to motivate it a bit with a nice example. This is like the perfect example. It's even mentioned in the Rachel's and Rachel's reading. You might have noticed if you looked at that. Because if we think about the terrorists on 9/11, and with the reading, I've included a short transcript from an episode of a very old now TV show. This TV show was called Politically Incorrect. It was hosted by Bill Maher. He has another TV show now on HBO. But anyway, but here's a clip on this, again, this old TV show of Politically Incorrect. Now, this aired almost a week after 9/11. Again, a week after 9/11, and we have this exchange here.
We have been the cowards, lobbing cruise missiles from 2,000 miles away. That's cowardly.
That is a
Staying in the airplane
yes.
when it hits the building.
That is
Say
a
what you want
terribly-
about it, not cowardly.
Now, like I said, this was a week after the terrorist attacks on 9/11. And the host, Bill Maher, there is saying, he is arguing that the terrorists, showed courage because they were willing to die by flying those planes, into the buildings. And meanwhile, which really gets Bill Maher into trouble, he also says, by comparison, the U.S. troops are cowards, because they just pull a trigger a couple miles away that shoots a missile that hits a target, way far away. And so, so Bill Maher is saying again that the terrorists showed courage while U.S. troops show cowardice. And maybe some of you know this, the show got canceled. Politically Incorrect was quickly canceled. It went on hiatus, and then it was canceled. And people were upset, needless to say. Now, here's what I will say, or rather what Aristotle will say, is that Bill Maher is wrong. Aristotle would almost certainly say that the actions of terrorists are not wise, they do not show wisdom, they do not show phronesis, and the actions of the terrorists are not courageous. There is no excellence of character, no excellence of courage in the terrorist action. So Aristotle's going to say they're not wise and they're not courageous. So how is that? Because people like Bill Maher say, well, that looks pretty courageous what they did, flying a plane in a building. Well, here's what Aristotle would do. Aristotle, first, we have wisdom, we have phronesis, but he wants to distinguish phronesis from cleverness. Now, in the previous video, of course, I've talked about wisdom. We've seen that wisdom is about using the right means to achieve the right ends. That's just phronesis. So what is cleverness here? Now, cleverness, Aristotle says, is the ability to achieve some goal. You have a target, and cleverness will help you hit the target. You have a goal, and cleverness will help you reach that goal. In other words, cleverness is being good at solving problems. Cleverness allows the person, be confronted with a situation, a real life situation, complex stuff going on. And cleverness allows the person to say, well, I have a goal here, and allows the person to look around and figure out what they need to do with all these things going on around them, what the relevant parts are they need to snatch at in order to make an effective decision to achieve whatever it is they wanted. Because a person who does not have clever, a person who is not clever, that person would look at all that stuff and just get overwhelmed and wouldn't know where to even begin. And you might think, when you first learn something, right, you're likely, you have no clue where to begin. And then as you develop and train and practice, you begin to identify certain things. Maybe even in this course, you've learned to identify at least a few things more. No? Oh, well, I try. But either way, if you don't have cleverness, you just can't, you're overwhelmed. You can't make an effective decision. Now, Aristotle would actually agree with Immanuel Kant here. Aristotle would agree that cleverness is a conditional good. Cleverness is a conditional good because look, in the hands of an evil person, cleverness can do all sorts of nasty, evil things. Because look, the terrorists on 9/11 were definitely clever because they ID'd a terrible end of killing all these civilians, and they effectively achieved that goal. Those terrorists were clever. Yes, that's cleverness. But Aristotle would say that is not wisdom. That is not phronesis, because you need to combine the cleverness of achieving ends with the actual right ends. The terrorists did not have the right ends. Killing innocents, not the right ends. So yes, they had the right means to do terrible things. That cleverness gave it to them, but to have wisdom, you need more than just cleverness. You need to have the actual right ends, because wisdom, remember, is the right means to the right ends. We've said that now. Cleverness will give you the effective means, but cleverness does not have to give you the right ends. It just says, give me the ends, I'll show you what to do. But of course, what determines the right ends? Well, I've told you the answer to this. Excellence of character, right? Excellence of character says, identify the intermediate action, that's the right end, do it. And so, yeah, so wisdom is a combination of cleverness with excellence of character. So now you can see why wisdom requires excellence of character, because excellence of character will tell wisdom what the right ends are. What are the right things to desire? Killing innocents, excellence of character would say that's a no-no. Helping others, other things, of course, we can imagine the excellence of character would like that. Wisdom would then, cleverness would kick in and tell you how to do it. That's wisdom. The right means to the right ends. Okay, well, wait a minute now. Have I jumped ahead by claiming that the terrorists aren't courageous? So what's going on there? Why don't the terrorists have courage? Now, this is where Aristotle will make a second distinction between excellence of character and what Aristotle calls natural excellence. So that's, again, excellence of character versus natural excellence. Now, of course, we've talked at great length in the previous module about excellence of character, again, how excellence of character has you, is about correctly achieving the intermediate between two extremes. Again, that's just excellence of character. Courage is about achieving, that intermediate between cowardice and recklessness, for instance. And so, well, what is natural excellence then? Well, natural excellence are the dispositions that a person might have by nature. Again, these dispositions a person has by nature as opposed to any kind of upbringing or practice or habituation. And so what Aristotle is saying here is that natural excellences are just are kind of the innate, if you will, because people have different kind of dispositions. Some people are a little more nervous. Other people are kind of naturally just brave. And Aristotle says, yeah, those are just our natural excellences, because some children just have natural dispositions to perform courageous actions. I don't even know. Was I naturally courageous or not? I don't know. But I definitely had friends who would just be very bold and things and brave in ways that I certainly wasn't growing up. But Aristotle would say they're naturally courageous, but they're not truly courageous. Because to be truly courageous, you need more than just, remember, it's not enough just to do the courageous. We've talked about this. It's not enough to just do the courageous thing. A naturally courageous person will just naturally do the courageous thing. But the naturally courageous person, again, won't know why what they're doing is courageous, or, they just do it, right? They're just bold, brave, but they couldn't tell you why what they're doing was bold or brave or the right thing to do. Because again, remember, we saw that with excellence of character. We need knowledge about why what you're doing is the right thing. And that's then how we go from natural excellence, once we have that knowledge, that leads from natural excellence to true excellence. Because Aristotle says, if you do not have that knowledge, your natural courage, say, could do great damage, because you won't know what you're doing, whether it's right or not. You're just doing what nature tells you to do. And so, yeah, we're back to Kant, Immanuel Kant. Natural courage and any other natural excellence is only conditionally good, because natural excellence may be used for good, but they could also be used for evil. Back to the 9/11 terrorists, right? Aristotle would say, yes, those terrorists had some natural courage because they had to master some fear in order to be able to fly those planes into those buildings. If you couldn't master your fear, you would not do that. And so, yeah, that is a natural form of courage. But obviously, that natural courage ended up being used for great evil, again, killing of civilians. So yes, those terrorists had some natural excellence in what they did, but they did not have true excellence of character. Because again, we need to combine natural excellence with a rational account or the correct prescription for what you ought to be doing. Killing innocent civilians is not the rational or correct prescription for what courage ought to be doing. And so, yes, it's not enough just to have natural mastery of our fear. We need the correct prescription, to know what is right or excellent about our action. Because again, that was the last part of the definition of excellence of character. Look right there. The last part is that we need to have the correct or rational prescription. So we know where the intermediate is, what actual courage is, as opposed to, I don't know if you consider it cowardice. Maybe it was recklessness. I don't know which one you would say the terrorists had, but Aristotle said that was not courage. Because yes, natural excellence gives you the ability to master your emotions, but you need that correct prescription so you can do, you don't do that damage. And so what determines the correct prescription? Well, I think you know the answer, maybe not, but I'll tell you anyway. That's wisdom. That's phronesis. Remember we said that's what wisdom gives us. So excellence of character combines that natural mastery of emotion, but with the wisdom to know the correct prescription for acting. And so that's why excellence of character requires wisdom as well. And some we've seen then, this is some pretty wild stuff here. Wisdom requires excellence of character because wisdom is cleverness plus excellence of character, and excellence of character requires wisdom because excellence of character involves a combination of natural excellence with wisdom. And so we've seen then that the terrorists on 9/11, they very well may have had natural courage and they very well may have had cleverness. But those two things came together and allowed them to do intense evil by targeting innocent civilians. And so what Aristotle would say is by doing that, the terrorists proved that they did not have true wisdom, they did not have phronesis, nor did they have true courage. And now math students often say, Professor, this is hopelessly recursive. To get wisdom, you need to have excellence of character. But to get excellence of character now, you need wisdom. And so now we have this kind of chicken and egg situation, right? Which is like, which comes first? Excellence of character or wisdom? But the good news is I already gave you the answer to this in the previous model when we talked about how to acquire the excellences of character. Because if you rewatch the video, especially towards the end there where I kind of already allude to this, is that as you're developing, as you're training with your courage coach, say who's teaching you what's courageous, what's not, and they're making you do it and all the rest of that. Remember, you're practicing, you're going through habituation, which is slowly starting to develop your character for courage and all the other virtues, right? But as you're acquiring all those excellences of character, you're also gaining wisdom because you're learning, you're acquiring the knowledge for how to do those things. And so what Aristotle is saying is you acquire both simultaneously. As you're building up your excellence of character, you're simultaneously gaining the wisdom to start being self-sufficient and doing it on your own. Whew, another whirlwind here, right? So now Aristotle believes he's finished his discussion of wisdom. Again, wisdom is helping us identify the correct prescription for identifying the intermediacy between two vices. And wisdom phronesis is what helps us do that. And now at this point, again, students now complain. It's like, Aristotle, this is not helpful. Can you please be even more specific about wisdom? And I think Aristotle would say here, you want me to be more specific about wisdom? And then Aristotle would say, hey, what unit are we in? Oh yeah, this is unit 6. This is about morality beyond universal rules and principles, morality beyond universal rules and principles. And so Aristotle says, I can't give you some magic formula, some magic rule, some magic principle about wisdom. After all, Aristotle would say, I'm an ancient Greek. You live in the modern world. So the particular situations you find yourself in are very different from, me being the ancient, Aristotle being the ancient Greek, right? So you live a life very different from Aristotle's life. And so Aristotle says, you have to work on your own. Well, not on your own. You have to work with your life about how you are going to acquire wisdom. Wisdom looking to the tradition of your elders and your customs and whatever. But also, it's not going to be a slave completely to tradition. Also, creating new wisdom from your own experiences. Because obviously, wisdom changes as we go through life, go through time, go through history. And so your happy life will involve some kind of synthesis of old and new. And Aristotle says, I can't tell you how that's going to go. That's your life. I mean, obviously, look, we said at the beginning, life is messy. life is imprecise. And we sort of remember that was one of the first videos we talked about Aristotle. Life is messy, life is imprecise. And so ethics will always have an element of imprecision and messiness. But at least Aristotle says, look, he hasn't left us out at sea. He's given us advice. He said, let's start with our emotions, our desires, and our appetites, and start to develop the habits and dispositions that will allow you to control and regulate and cultivate those emotions, desires, and appetites. And then, of course, you're going to need a form of wisdom that's going to help you figure out how to go about doing that. But that's going to be so intensely particular to you, your life experience, and the world in which you find yourself. There's no magic formula. And so Aristotle's going to say, look, all I can give you is that sketch, that outline, but then you will have to fill in on your own with your life. You'll mess it up. We all do. But that's how we learn and grow and develop and live well and live excellently. Thank you, Aristotle. That's more than enough. This video went on too long. I know, so much stuff. I really think it's cool. I hope you can at least find a little interest in there. But you know what I think we're all interested in? Oh, yeah. Let's remove some arm flab. Wave bye to Aristotle. We're done with Aristotle. Yes, I think we've all developed our intellectual capacities. So let's just wrap that up by finishing the module quiz. Tweet a little bit, maybe. And then when you're ready, holy cow, once you're ready, we can move on into the final module of the course, if you could believe that. But until then, take care, stay safe.